Chapter 10 The heart of the mountain. The red light from the vault door pulsed in time with a grinding roar from the keep's core, a monstrous, mechanical heartbeat that seemed to shake the very foundations of the mountain. The air, once still and cold, now thrummed with a malevolent energy, a promise of violence that made the hairs on Kaelin's arms stand on end. The smooth, black metal of the door seemed to mock them, an impassive sentinel guarding secrets they were not worthy of. "It's waking up," Kaelin stated, the words a gravelly understatement. He drew his family's broadsword, its rusted steel a stark, honest contrast to the alien perfection of their prison. "Whatever grand welcome the ancients had planned, I don't think we're going to receive it." "It's not looking for us," Alara muttered, her knuckles white where she gripped her glowing staff. Her eyes, wide with a scholar's frantic focus, darted between her translation tablet and the hand-shaped panel. "Biosignature. It must be a specific lineage, a key embedded in the blood. A legacy we do not share." She pushed a stray strand of silver hair from her face, her usual composure fraying at the edges. "Their magic is too specific, too clinical." The grinding intensified, and a new sound joined the cacophony, a high-pitched, chittering whine echoing from the chasm behind them. Kaelin spun around, planting his feet wide. From the darkness below, small motes of angry red light were rising, swarming like fireflies from the seventh hell. "Alara," he said, his voice low and tight. "We have company." They were spheres of polished black metal, each the size of a man's fist, propelled by an invisible force. A single, glowing red-eye dominated their center. Dozens of them ascended from the abyss, their whirring growing to a hornet's buzz as they fanned out, forming a loose cordon at the edge of the platform. They were sentinels, but smaller, faster, and far more numerous than the guardian they had faced in the armory. "Malevolent sprites," Alara breathed, taking a half-step back. "Sprites don't usually come armed," Kaelin countered as the first of the spheres darted forward. Its red eye flared. A bolt of crimson energy, thin as a needle and twice as fast, shot toward him. Kaelin, acting on pure instinct honed by years of training, threw himself to the side. The bolt sizzled past his ear, striking the rock wall with a sharp crack and leaving a smoking, molten pockmark. "They're not waiting for an invitation," he yelled, raising his sword. He glanced at the sunreavers slung over his back. With only one energy block left, he couldn't afford to waste its power on this swarm. This would be a fight of steel and grit. "Buy me time, Alara! Find a way through that door!" He charged the nearest cluster of drones. Another volley of energy stingers lanced through the air. One caught him on the shoulder, a searing pain that felt like a hot poker being driven into his mail. He grunted, stumbling, but the gorget around his neck flared with its familiar golden light, the force of the blow dissipating into a harmless shimmer. He thanked the ancients for their baffling, life-saving trinkets and swung his sword. The heavy steel blade met the first drone with a clang that vibrated up his arm. The metal sphere was thrown back but was otherwise undamaged. It righted itself in the air, its red eye fixed on him with cold, mechanical fury. "They're armored!" he shouted over his shoulder. "My sword won't break them. Just hold them off." Alara's voice was strained, a desperate plea layered over a command. She was back at the panel, her tablet held aloft, its light illuminating the frantic glyphs shifting across its surface. "The lexicon says verification, not identity. It's a key, not a census. It wants to confirm a component, a piece of the original design." While Kaelin became a whirlwind of desperate defense, parrying, dodging, using the flat of his blade to bat the drones away like oversized, deadly insects, Alara's mind raced. A piece of the original design. What did they have that was truly of this place? Their weapons and amulets were tools, peripherals. They were not part of the fortress itself. Her eyes scanned their meager equipment, her gaze falling upon the satchel at her hip, where the faint outline of a curved object pressed against the leather. A sudden, electrifying thought, sharp and clear as a lightning strike, pierced through her panic. She fumbled with the clasp of her pouch, her fingers clumsy with urgency. Kalen grunted as another energy bolt slammed into his chest. The gorget flared brightly, but the sheer number of attacks was overwhelming it. Its golden light flickered, and he could feel the impacts now, hammering against the shield like fists against the door. He was being driven back, step by step, toward the unyielding vault. A bolt got past his guard and seared a line of fire across his thigh, making him hiss in pain. "Ilara!" he roared, a note of real desperation in his voice. "Any sentry now!" "The glass!" she cried out, pulling the shard of a spaceship's cockpit from her bag. It was the unbreakable green glass, her most peculiar, most useless treasure. It felt cool and impossibly smooth in her hand. It wasn't a tool. It was a fragment. A relic in the truest sense, a piece of a fallen saint. A piece of the original whole. She shoved the tablet into her satchel and lunged for the control panel, ignoring the sizzling energy bolts whipping past her. With a prayer to the forgotten gods of science and steel, she pressed the curved edge of the green glass shard flat against the hand-shaped indentation. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. The red light of denial remained, the grating buzz of rejection unchanged. Kalen took another staggering blow, his shield faltering for a split second. Pain, raw and burning, flared across his ribs. He fell to one knee, sword point wavering. Then, everything changed. The harsh red light on the panel flickered, sputtered, and turned a brilliant, welcoming emerald. The grating buzz was replaced by a deep, resonant chime that echoed through the chamber, cutting through the whine of the drones. Asterisk component signature verified. Access granted. Asterisk the words appeared on the panel in the ancient script, but Ilara needed no translation. The ring of glyphs around the massive vault door began to glow with the same green light. With a hiss of depressurizing atmosphere, the hair-thin seams widened. The door did not swing open on hinges. Instead, like the iris of a colossal eye, its concentric segments began to retract into the surrounding wall, sliding away with the sound of perfectly machined, impossibly heavy components. An archway of pure, untroubled darkness was revealed. The metal sprites paused, their whirring engines quieting as if in confusion, their targeting logic momentarily scrambled by the door's authentication. "Go!" Kalen yelled, seizing the opportunity. He grabbed Ilara by the arm and half threw her through the opening. He dove in after her, rolling across a floor coated in a fine layer of ancient dust just as the drones seemed to regain their purpose, swarming toward the entrance. With another resonant chime, the iris door began to close behind them, its segments sliding back into place with inexorable finality. The last thing Kalen saw was a sea of glowing red eyes before the door sealed shut, plunging them into absolute darkness and a profound, ringing silence. The chittering whine of the drones was gone, cut off as if by a headsman's axe. For a long moment, they both lay on the floor, chests heaving, the silence a deafening bomb after the chaos. Kalen could feel the throb of his bruised ribs, and the lingering sting of the energy burns. Note to self. He rasped into the darkness. "Your useless treasures are proving to be remarkably useful." Ilara didn't answer immediately. He heard a soft rustling, and then the crystal atop her staff bloomed with a gentle, white light, pushing back the oppressive dark. They were in a vast, circular chamber. The air was stale, cold, and utterly still, carrying the scent of ozone and dust millennia old. The floor, walls, and ceiling were made of the same seamless black metal, curving up into a high, vaulted dome. The light from Ilara's staff was swallowed by the immensity of the space, its edges lost to shadow. And in the center of the room, on a raised dais, sat a single, ornate chair. It was more throne than seat, angled before a sweeping crescent of dark consoles and dead display panels. Above it, hanging in the void of the dome, was a complex metal armature, like a skeletal chandelier, aimed at the empty space before the throne. This was no crypt, no armory, no mere corridor. It was a sanctum. A place of ultimate authority. It was the bridge of a starfaring vessel, the command nexus of a fortress, the very heart of the mountain. By the gods, Elara whispered, her voice filled with a reverence that transcended both fear and academic curiosity. She took a tentative step forward, her staff's light playing across the silent consoles, revealing buttons and switches whose functions she could only dream of. Kalen pushed himself to his feet, wincing as his ribs protested. He looked at the command throne, at the silent, watching viewports that he now realized must line the curved walls, currently as black and dead as a winter sky. He looked at the device hanging from the ceiling, recognizing its purpose from the smaller version they had seen before. It was a projector, one of colossal power. "I'm starting to get an idea," he said, his voice low with awe. "This is where the captain steers the ship." As Elara approached the central dais, a section of the floor beneath her feet lit up with soft, white guide strips, forming a pathway to the command throne. Proximity sensors still active after untold ages. The path illuminated the final few steps to the console. There, on the main panel directly before the throne, a single glyph was pulsing with a soft, cyan light. It was a silent invitation. A question waiting for an answer after 1,000 years of sleep. Elara held up her lexicon tablet, its screen flickering to life to translate the solitary, patient glyph. The words that appeared were simple, yet they held the weight of a lost empire and the promise of 1,000 unknown worlds. Display celestial cartography?